When I grew up, I was in a church that believed in the rapture, the tribulation, the millennium, and we were premillennialists. And, for some of you, you're like, what on earth is that? I've heard about that. Maybe you've had a classmate at school or a coworker talk about that. Maybe people, are saying, are you premillennial? Are you post-millennial? Are you pre-tribulationist? Are you mid-tribulationist? Are you post-tribulationist? And it all sounds like a big word salad. But those are actually positions that relate to the end times. Now, fortunately, we're not going to walk through all of that. We'd be here for about the next 5 days. But I want to just give you a real brief summary of what all that stuff is, because lots of American Christians believe something that's part of that. So I'm going to deal with the most popular one, which is premillennial dispensationalism. And what that refers to is that the rapture happens before the tribulation, and the tribulation happens before the millennium, and then after that is the great white throne judgment. So let's unpack that, and I'm going to use some history to make most sense of it. Number one, and this is often a surprise to people who've been taught this, is if you asked anybody before 1882 what they thought of the rapture, the response would be, "What is that?" That word rapture was never used in Christianity until 1882, and the concept of the rapture has been taken away from the earth at the beginning of a time of suffering, didn't even exist in Christianity until 1882. So what happened in 1882? There was a pastor named John Nelson Darby who had been doing a lot of thinking about the end times, and he created a system from his read of Scripture and then introduced it during Bible conferences between 1882 and 1885 in England, and those were called the Powers Court Conferences, named after Lady Powers Court, who owned the conference grounds. The way he put it is God works at different times and different ways. And those different times, the term he used was dispensations. So God worked in different ways in different dispensations. And one of those dispensations was the end times dispensation. And from his reading of Scripture, there would be first the rapture, when all Christians would be taken away from the earth. And then there would be a period of 7 years called the tribulation, 3.5 years of false peace, which you would get the one world church, which was a false church led by the false prophet, and there would be a one world government led by what he called the Antichrist. And then the second 3.5 years would be marked by intense persecution against all the followers of Jesus. And again, during this period, only 1 in 4 people who were left behind would manage to survive through the end of the tribulation. At the end of the tribulation, Christ comes back. There's a big, huge war, and then he establishes 1,000 years where Christ rules the earth directly. At the end of that, the forces of evil regather, and there's a big battle in the Valley of Armageddon, which geographically is in the area we now know as Israel. And at the end of that, the enemy is finally defeated, and then we have the white throne judgment.